I'm joined by Hall of Famer John Smoltz. Smoltzy, tell me this. What's harder, winning a Cy Young or an Emmy Award?
Oh, man. Winning a Cy Young. It takes a lot longer to happen. You know, it's funny when you mention something like that. I just go back to all those years of being predicted to win and just feeling like a failure. But in 96, fortunately, I was able to at least get that off my back because that was starting to bother me.
Download the Brett Boone Podcast, available on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast.
This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily. Thank goodness it's Friday. Hope everybody is enjoying it. The IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. I'm Jacob Albrock alongside Tommy Castor, Jad Chambers producing. Glad to have you on the air here on KFH. Glad to have you on our video streams if you're there, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter as well. We've been talking Big 12 preseason football poll. This one comes from the media. This one has Kansas State at number 2, pretty close behind Texas. And it has us wondering, like, what is a reasonable expectation? I think the expectation is to win the Big 12, but what's a reasonable floor, I think, for fans when we look at the league, when we look at what's there for other teams? I would contend that top 4 K-State fans will feel fine about this season. And I think the reason for that, Tommy, is it's not that, you know, it's an excuse for not winning the Big 12. It's that they lost a lot of really good players. There are questions about this team. I have big questions about pass catchers, and I have real big questions about the defense. Now, only because we haven't seen it, right? Like, and you got to replace Deuce Vaughn, too. So really 3 big questions. But they do get their quarterback back. They do return an entire offensive line, like all those things we like, too, which is why I would have picked them to win the league. But I think if they don't win it, it's, you know, as long as they don't fall flat on their face and get inside that top 4 and are in contention, you know, the whole time, the reason is what's coming down the pipeline. And the fact that K-State is now recruiting at a level that I think has this fan base excited, you know, foundationally with what's coming in the next couple of classes, that it's not like all, you know, in some years, let's see if I can give an example. There have been a lot of years with K-State, Tommy, where it felt like this is the year they have to win, and then we know they're going to go through a rebuild cycle, right? That's sort of what has to happen, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's been the model for a long time. You build it up, you get a lot of experienced players, you contend for a league title, and then you got to rebuild it. Well, guess what? They won a league title last year. Now they're expected to win a league title again maybe this year. And then next year are all these insanely talented young players recruited at a level we haven't seen in a while for K-State. So it's this foundation that's been built that seems a little bit more stable for long-term sustained success, I think, that allows for a little bit more of a big, wide open landing space for a floor, that it doesn't feel like championship or bust to me as much this year as it has in other years.
Yeah, I don't think it's championship or bust at all for the Wildcats. And just because they've got a foundation for long-term success doesn't mean that you can't shoot for the short term also. I mean, I think that's where it is, right? And look, I think that the national perception of Kansas State is changing. I think that if the Wildcats are able to win another Big 12 championship, or at least be in a Big 12 title game for the second year in a row, I think that national perception will continue to change and evolve and grow. I think that if the Wildcats are unable to duplicate the level of success this season as they had a year ago, then there starts to be the conversation nationally about, was it a fluke? Was it a one-year only thing? Did all the stars align for the Wildcats in the right way possible? I think that they need year number 2 to back up what happened last season for them to continue to have this upward trajectory. And I think that they're going to have it regardless. I mean, even if they finish in the top 4, like you say, is a reasonable floor for the Wildcats, they're still going to have long-term success because I fully trust in Chris Kleiman and his system and what he's built in Manhattan. But I think to be able to sustain their perception nationally, not only in the conference, but nationally, they've got to back up what they did last year with another at least appearance in the Big 12 championship game this year.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think honestly, nationally, what happens with K-State will depend on a lot about Will Howard. What happens with their exposure and attention, because I think they're obviously going to be competitive enough and be in the mix in big-time games. But if Will Howard meets an expectation, then they're going to be really relevant nationally because he's going to be in the Heisman picture, and he's going to be an NFL prospect. That will be the biggest thing, honestly, to keep them in the national conversation, I think, as anything else, is him delivering on what we think might be there. Even more than, maybe this is crazy, and it might be, and I'm saying this out loud for the first time now, so I leave myself room to retract this, but even more than just, winning games and staying relevant, I think if Will Howard plays really well and is quickly put into a Heisman conversation / like first-round quarterback type conversation, that's going to bring as much national exposure to K-State as anything else they do on the field, because we love quarterbacks, right? Everyone wants to know who the next guy is going to be. And so, and obviously those things would run hand in hand. For him to be doing that, they need to be winning and doing all that stuff. But I think that, for as far as like impact to recruiting and impact to, long-term success and the exposure of the program, and if they're in national television windows, his play is as important as anything the team does, it feels like, to me anyway.
Yeah, I think that one of the things with this program is that, last year, I think that there was kind of a bubbling up early on in the season about this program and where it's headed towards and the success that they're having. As soon as they moved away from Adrian Martinez and put in Will Howard, and we started to see them win games under Will Howard and all of that, at that point, you started to have folks pay attention more to Kansas State than what I think they had in quite a while. I mean, probably since Bill Snyder was there. I think that in order for them to sustain that level of exposure, especially in a Big 12, keep in mind, this is the final year for Texas and OU in the Big 12. And you would imagine that both of those programs, and knowing where they've been ranked in the preseason poll, Texas at 1, Oklahoma at 3, they're both going to want to go out on top, right? And there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this conference this season. You've got 14 teams for basically 1 year only, with Texas and OU and the newcomers at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this conference overall. It is a prime opportunity, not only for Will Howard and his future prospects in the NFL and whatever that might look like for him, but also for the program to be at the complete top of the mountain in this conference in a year where everybody's going to be watching it.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a big year for K-State. And last year, as big as it was, sort of set the stage for the next, 3 years at least, 4, when you get Avery Johnson and that group in there. I mean, you've got for a different, and they're all for different reasons. Right? Last year was the conference championship, sort of setting the table for, could this team enter the college football playoff? I mean, I think it's possible. I don't think that's outrageous at all with what they have coming back. Again, a lot of questions to answer still. It is a little bit different than some years for some teams where you don't have – they have plenty of questions to answer. But if they answer them well, yeah, sure they could contend in that space. But then it's going to turn to the Avery Johnson era, we hope, right, after this year, and how quickly that develops. And then you're talking about, the Elite 11 super prospect. and a really good class around him and continuing to do well in recruiting. So you really, last year in a lot of ways could be the year we look back 10 years from now as this beginning stage of the golden era. I totally think that's on the table. I think that is
But what you can't do
reach.
is you can't have a letdown from last year to this year
And
to be able to then look back in 10 years and say it's the golden era of K-State football.
Yeah, we're trying to define what that letdown is. That's and look, it is July 7th, and we're reacting to a media poll. Okay, so don't think anybody's like overreacting here on Sports Daily today. We're just like, it's almost like we're going through this exercise of what would be a letdown, like what defines a letdown this year. I would contend, back to the original point that sort of started this conversation we didn't intend to have today, is that a letdown would be anything probably outside the top 4. Now, we say that now, right? Like catastrophic bad luck injury stuff can change all that, right? That can be a moving floor to some degree. So if things go well, though, relatively speaking, I think top 4 would negate any sort of letdown. Like if Kansas State finishes 4 behind Texas, Oklahoma, who has some sort of resurgence, and Texas Tech, who lives up to expectations, I won't sit back there and be like, God, what a letdown that year was. I think that's unreasonable. In a league like this, for K-State, who has the challenges they face, in whatever way over big programs, to finish top 4 in the league, I don't know that that's ever going to be a letdown to me. I think that that's unfair.
I would agree with you if it was a different quarterback than Will Howard. This is a guy that took over and shocked the college football world last year with, the way that he had stepped up his game, improved his basically his talents and everything that he does on the field. And I think you could make a strong argument, and we did earlier this week, that he could have very easily been selected for Big 12 preseason player of the year over Jalen Daniels. So if you were losing Will Howard and let's say it was Avery Johnson starting, okay, well then I understand maybe, taking your foot off the gas a little bit as far as their expectations, but this is a veteran quarterback who showed the world that he can lead his team to a Big 12 championship and a New Year's Six bowl game. And you're returning him. You're not returning all of the other pieces, right? But you're returning him. And I feel like knowing that this will be Will Howard's last season, those expectations, I think that that's a huge reason why the Wildcats were picked at number 2 in the poll. And I think that that's why I'm comfortable saying I feel like an expectation outside of being in the Big 12 championship game would be somewhat of a letdown for this program, knowing who's going to be under center.
Yeah, it's tough, and we got to see it. Like that's the other thing too. Like I'm not going to feel real comfortable with this until we see a few weeks of the season, because I don't know what else is going to tell me about the defense, right? Until they start playing games in the Big 12. That's the other thing too, and that would be a disappointment. But like Tommy, what if they're not as good defensively? Because that is going to be key for this team always, is to be good on the offensive line and good defensively. Because at the core, Kansas State still needs to be a ball control type of a team, right? Like you still want to run the ball effectively. You still want to control the clock. You don't want to get in track meets in this league especially, where at the skill positions, almost always, you're running into buzzsaws with the Texas schools and everything else. Like you have to be able to play that old school grinded out football if you're going to succeed with K-State, at least for a little while. Maybe they can become a shootout team, but I don't think that's the best case scenario. I think they have to be able to play good defense, and I just don't know how we're going to have any grasp on that defense until we see them play a little bit. They lost 3 guys on that side of the ball to the NFL.
Yeah. They certainly have holes they've got to fill defensively, and they've got some top talent on that defense. Kobe Savage was picked on the all-first team Big 12, and so he, I would imagine, will take a step forward in his game, which was already pretty solid. And for sure, they're going to have to replace the production of Anyudike Uzama and Brents and, all of that. They've got to do that for sure. You mentioned the offensive line. As long as Cooper Beebe is on the offensive line, I don't have a ton of concerns about, them protecting Will Howard. And I know he's only one player, but he's a really damn good player. So I think that overall, yeah, they do have some big holes to fill from losing players to the NFL. But by and large, with the talent that they're returning and knowing some of the bigger names they brought in through the transfer portal, I still am bullish on Kansas State. I still am confident that we can see them competing in a Big 12 championship game in January.
Yeah, the offensive line is going to be great. They bring everybody back. And Treshaun Ward, boy, I don't know anything about Treshaun Ward. I'm not going to pretend like I do know anything about Treshaun Ward. I don't know. Like, I guess he'll be good. We'll
but
find out.
It's not just Ward. Remember how last season there was a really good balance. And I remember watching several K-State games where I thought, man, they've got this workload down really well between Deuce Vaughn and DJ Giddens. Like, Giddens was effective when he came in and spelled Deuce Vaughn. And so if they can find that balance again with Ward and Giddens, then I think that you can be looking at a two-headed monster running the football for Kansas State.
I do too. Well, I think that's more of a reality anyway.
Yeah. And I feel okay with that. Think about, like, you lose Deuce Vaughn, and that's a big blow, right? And everything he did in his career at Kansas State.
Offense, though.
It does, but think about all the different times. With any team, when you lose a star running back, the question typically is, man, like, how are they going to bounce back and respond to that? I feel fairly confident in, even if it's a timeshare between
I do
Giddens
because
and
of their
Ward.
Offensive line. I think they're going to be able to run the ball because of that line. But it's still like Deuce Vaughn's big playability matters, right?
Yeah.
In breaking one off, and I think Treshaun Ward can do that, right? I hope so. He's not very big. I would imagine that's part of his game. There's just a lot of questions we need answered, I think. Last year there was really only one question, right? And it was Adrian Martinez, and that question wasn't answered well, and they did fine anyway.
Yeah.
But, that was really it last year. You're coming in, you're like, okay, if Adrian Martinez can just play moderately well, this team can win a Big 12 title. We said that going into the season, and we were right. This year feels like there are more questions than there were a year ago, even though you feel really good about everything. And again, let me say this again. I would have voted him one. I would have voted him one over Texas. That's how much confidence I have in what we saw from Will Howard and knowing that he's going to have good protection. Like, that's what sort of, I always focus in on quarterbacks. And I'm like, man, if you're starting with quarterback and then that quarterback is at least going to be protected, like, that's a good place to start when you know the foundation's there like it is. So I'd have taken him one. I'm just, we're just talking today about, like, what would be not number one that would still be okay. I would contend that top four, they'll be fine, because I think everybody's so excited about next year and the years after that, this is going to be a fun year. And maybe it could be really fun. I do think if things go well defensively, this is a team that absolutely could be in the mix for a CFP. Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back. Tommy's going to hit me with this story featuring Victor Wembanyama and Britney Spears. I've been waiting
all morning for this.
I have intentionally not looked at this. I don't know what this story is because I wanted to do it this way on the show to have a little fun. Like, I'm going to get the news for the first time. Tommy will set this up. If you haven't seen it, there is something going on between Victor Wembanyama and Britney Spears, and I don't even want to speculate on what that might be. But we'll have it for you right after this. 869-1240 is the IHOP Hotline. Sports Daily coming right back at you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Strawbrook and Castor. Okay. I'm coming into this blind. Victor Wembanyama and Britney Spears are involved in some sort of story that I don't know what it is. I haven't looked. Tommy's going to inform me, and we'll see if this is a great July 7th story or if this is a July 7th story. Here we go.
It's a wonderful July 7th story. I'm so excited to share this with you for the first time. This took place Wednesday night in Las Vegas. near a restaurant at the Aria Hotel and Casino. Victor Wembanyama said that he believes that Britney Spears grabbed him from behind as he was walking into that restaurant, and that the security detail he was with pushed the pop star away. Wembanyama said that he wasn't told that Spears was the person who grabbed him until hours later. Britney Spears filed a police report. She claimed that she was struck by a security guard while she was trying to get Wembanyama's attention. Spears said that she basically just wanted to get a picture with Victor Wembanyama. All she did, according to her, was that she simply tapped him on the shoulder, and that his security, quote, backhanded me in the face without looking back in front of a crowd, nearly knocking me down and causing my glasses to fly off my face. So a little bit of an altercation. I never thought I would say those words, between Victor Wembanyama and Britney Spears in Las Vegas.
Grabbed him from behind or grabbed his behind?
Grabbed him from behind is what
Okay.
Wembanyama said. Yeah.
Okay.
She said all that she did was tap him on the shoulder.
I don't know etiquette with security details. I know that it's probably not great, idea to run and grab somebody that has a security detail or even touch them, quite frankly.
Yeah.
They have paid these people to make sure that nobody touches them. It sounds like this is probably this seems like a little bit of a non-story. It's interesting, obviously, because it's Britney Spears. I don't know. I mean, what is the, what's going to be the outcome here? Is she looking for
she did file a police report. She's looking for an apology. So she said that in her statement, she said, I have yet to get a public apology from the player, his security, or their organization. I hope they will. She goes on to say that she gets swarmed by people all the time, but that her security team doesn't hit any of them, and that she urged people in the public eye to set an example and treat all people with respect.
Yeah, I probably don't have any issue with any of that. I don't know. I mean, he's 19. He hasn't had to have a security detail for a little while. Like, this is a new experience for him. It's become more of a question for a security team than him. Joe on YouTube brings up a really good point. How does Britney reach his shoulder just to tap on it? And listen, the laws of physics, that is a good point, Joe. I don't know that is possible. And so that makes me believe maybe it was more than a shoulder tap here.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I could reach Victor Wembanyama's shoulder easily. Like, I would need a step stool. Guy's 7 foot, 3, 4?
5.
Yeah. And Britney Spears is probably not
maybe
6
5
foot tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a great point. Joe brings it to the conversation.
Did you ever watch? This makes me think about. You ever watch the Seinfeld episode with the Keith Hernandez? We're reconstructing
the loogie.
We're reconstructing this entire event and figuring out, can Britney Spears actually even touch Wembanyama's shoulder?
But what is etiquette for security? Right? Is security allowed to just, in her words, backhand? Which if she's misremembering a shoulder touch versus a grab from behind, maybe she's misremembering a backhand. There's cameras everywhere in Vegas, by the way. I'm sure that you could probably figure this all out pretty quick. And if she filed a police report, police will. But, what is etiquette for security? Because they're being paid to make sure, literally, that nobody touches him.
Right.
And if somebody they didn't know it was Britney Spears. And that's not her point. I think her point is to, not overreact and backhand people. But, if I'm paying somebody to take care of me and protect me, if you come out and you make a big deal out of this, if you're Victor Wembanyama, then that's sort of like a knock to your security, right? I get it. You got to be, I don't know what the appropriate response is here. Yeah, you know what? They were doing their job. Maybe don't grab me from behind. I'm sorry if anybody gets backhanded in the face, but they kind of did what they were supposed to do there. If I'm paying security and somebody's grabbing at me, yeah, I want them to, to make sure that doesn't happen.
So Wembanyama claims that he and his security detail did not realize that it was Britney Spears at the time.
Who cares?
They just thought it was a fan, or whatever, trying to grab him. Just a person. And then also the Las Vegas Police Department did issue a statement saying that officers responded to a battery investigation at the Aria. They didn't specify any individual names. The statement said that no arrest or citations have been issued and no further details will be provided at this time. I can't imagine that anything will happen one way or another, but I know that I know Britney is looking for an apology. It'll be interesting to see if she actually gets one.
Is Britney Spears at the point of her career that this is a good attention grab, or is she still at that elite, celebrity status where she doesn't need something like this?
I mean, she's at the point in her career where she's got a residency in Vegas, right? Like, so you kind
does?
of,
that's why she's
there. She's had, wow. I'm guessing she still does. She's had in the past a residency there. And so,
yeah, so I don't
think about, think about when artists do a residency in Vegas, typically they're on the downward slide of their career.
Oh, not always.
Right?
I saw Gaga in Vegas right after that movie. She was like at the peak of her career, maybe.
Well, but it's, I mean, like Wayne Newton has a residency in Vegas, right? I mean, David Copperfield has a residency in Vegas.
So much money to just hang out and do the same show every night. Like it's like guaranteed tour money. Either way, I don't think Britney Spears needs this. I don't know that we've had many like pop star celebrities bigger than Britney Spears. Like she's in that Madonna stratosphere, right? Like maybe even bigger for sometimes all the wrong reasons. So I don't think this is necessarily some attention grab. I'll tell you this. I'm impressed that she's enough of a sports fan to know who Victor Wembanyama is and why he's important. I'm impressed by that. I'm impressed by Wembanyama. I think his security staff for making sure nobody gets to him because that's what they're supposed to be doing. And, I think this is probably a great July 7th story that nobody ever saw coming. And, Victor Wembanyama and Britney Spears walk into a bar kind of a thing like that you never see coming.
It's like a game of Mad Libs. Like you would never put Wembanyama and Britney Spears together.
Yeah, I can get on board with this story. It's very interesting. Where it goes from here, if they're smart, they'll both use it to their advantage. And, like, she'll collaborate with him on some song or something. That's what they should do. If you're really going to take advantage of the situation, make some music video with Wemby and Britney Spears and whatever. Boy, you talk about elevating to superstar status right away. Here's a celebrity story for you. I don't get much like celebrities. I don't really care. Like I've always said, like I'm not an autograph guy. I'm not a. If I had like the celebrity moment, it's to actually have a conversation with somebody that maybe you just happen to run into at a bar or something, and you're like bellied up next to somebody, whatever it is. Other than that, I'd rather avoid the whole situation to begin with. So we're in New York City. This would have been in probably like 2009 or so. We're out in front. I'm in New York City on a school like conference trip. And because I am a wonderful son, I invited my mom recreationally to come and like hang out outside of all the, I was like, come to New York City. You've never been. It'll be super fun. And so she did. And it was a blast. It was so much fun. In that experience, one, my mom in New York City is an experience on the subway, at illegal merchandise shops. It was a whole thing, and it was really pretty funny, actually. But anyway, so we're sitting there, we're walking down the street, we're in front of, I think it was Trump Tower, and inside, and walking out or down that sidewalk, I don't know what part of the city that is or anything. Just remember that's where we were, and all of a sudden, we see Pat Sajak, and so I kind of learned the alphabet from Wheel of Fortune or something, whatever it was when I was a kid. And of course, I was a smart kid. I was young when I learned it, and my mom needed to let Pat Sajak know that Wheel of Fortune is the reason that, I was really good at the alphabet at a very young age. So you don't know my mom, but she doesn't really abide by societal norms. So she goes up to Pat, and she's like, "Hey, Pat, I got to tell you this story." And he's clearly like anybody would be like, whoa, lady, like, but back up a little bit, whatever. And so he's trying to like smile and be nice and like get in his cab to get the hell out of there. And so my mom follows him into the cab.
Oh,
gets in the back seat with him, proceeds to tell him that story that she was going to tell him. Like you're going to hear this story, and then gets out like they're best friends forever. And, for her, it's like, I met Pat Sajak. He was so sweet. And for him, it's like, oh, my God, my life was on the line there. And it was just like this great, that's always my favorite, celebrity sighting moment. It was when my mom jumped into the back of a cab with Pat Sajak, uninvited, to tell him the story about how he helped me learn my alphabet.
I love that. I've got one too. Several years ago, there's a band. I don't know if you're familiar with them or if really anybody is, but there's a band by the name of Magic, with an exclamation mark at the end, and they were a one-hit wonder. They had the song called "Rude." Why you gotta be so rude? Regardless, that was kind of their big song.
I like that song.
And so I was invited to go to a private show to see them in Chicago at House of Blues, and so I flew to Chicago, watched them at House of Blues, and then there was like a meet and greet mingling deal with them at a bar right outside of House of Blues after the show. So I am talking with the band. I had ordered a beer, and the waitress proceeds to bring me my beer as I'm talking with the band. And we're kind of in a circle. So it's me and then the three guys from the band around me, and we're chatting. She hands me my beer. I take a drink in the middle of my sentence, and it goes down the wrong way, and I end up coughing and spitting beer all over the band. And I'm incredibly apologetic about it. They were not accepting of my apology whatsoever. And the conversation went really south. Like, they were looking for their management, looking for towels to wipe off the beer and my spit from their face. I don't blame them. I probably would have been the same way. And I was mortified, and I got the hell out of there as quickly as I could.
It's probably what, spun their careers down the wrong path.
Probably. Yeah. I would have thought okay, maybe one of them would have been like, hey, it's okay. It was an accident. It happens. No, they were all like, what are you doing? What'd you do? And I'm really sorry, guys. That was an accident. I took my drink too quick, and I started to choke, and I coughed all over you, and I apologize.
I'm going to have a look. Okay, I'm trying to. So you said it's Magic with an exclamation point?
Correct. Yes.
That is not a good thing to Google because it brings up all kinds of things. Let's have a look at. Let's have a look. Yeah, I can't even find them. That's not a good sign. When I
so according to Wikipedia, they are a Canadian reggae fusion band, if that tells you anything about them. But they're a one-hit wonder.
I remember that song,
yeah,
but I can't.
It was a number one song for a while.
Yeah, I can't find, I literally cannot find a picture of them.
I've always wanted to,
here we go.
Genuinely apologize to them. So
we'll take the opportunity now as I get a look and see if. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't like to stereotype, but that strikes me as a group of people who wouldn't be okay with getting beer spit all over them. That might take themselves a little more seriously than to be okay with that. Yeah, I mean. Okay. Well, listen. Whether you had something to do with them being a one-hit wonder and not a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame band, we can only speculate. But I would say yes, you probably did.
Yeah. I mean, if they ever go on VH1, the top one-hit wonders of all time, I would like to be interviewed for that and tell my side of the story as to why I believe they are one-hit wonders now.
One of those behind the music things.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what it was? Behind the music.
Yep.
Yeah. I've been trying to watch the version of that for pro wrestling, Dark Side of the Ring or something like that. Man, rock star or pro wrestler? What's harder on the body? Which lifestyle is more, difficult to come out of and be good at?
It's got to be pro wrestling, right? I mean, because it's the
of the
lifestyle and it's the physical toll. Yeah.
Yeah. Those dudes partied, man. Did you ever watch the Ric Flair 30 for 30?
Absolutely.
Where he talks
Remember
about
when
Hutchinson?
He talked about Hutchinson? Yeah, about how there's nothing to do, and I watched that for sure.
I love that. Terry Funk is a family friend and an idol, and all of these things. We're close with that family, and he and Flair ran at the same time, and it's just man, I think about that now. And I'm creeping up on 40, and to know that some of those guys have been able to do that for as long as they did, and how long it takes me to recover from a night of partying now, and I'm just how do you maintain that stamina?
And if I'm at the point now, if I stand up out of a chair the wrong way, I can't move for a couple of days. So I can't imagine. Yeah, for sure. And, what's crazy now is you've got a guy like Ric Flair who's like a hip-hop icon at like the age of 70-something.
He's an
like,
everything icon.
It's crazy.
He lived a hard life. I don't want to like incorrectly idolize, the lifestyle he's lived, but the character he played and sort of is in reality, it just is fantastic stuff. It's pretty cool. Anyway, that was a weird left turn. Victor Wembanyama, Britney Spears, mark that off your bingo card. Didn't see that coming. Yeah, maybe I expected a little bit more out of that story, but that's a pretty good story. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Is there any chance in the world DeAndre Hopkins goes to the Chiefs? Apparently, it's still on the table. We'll explore that as we make our way through this weekend edition of Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. So there is a report out that the Chiefs are still in the mix. This is, I think the report initially came from ESPN, as they're still
Jeremy
talking
Fowler.
with DeAndre Hopkins. Okay, Jeremy Fowler had it. So I've always said, in my initial gut reaction was that he would be a Chief because it makes a lot of sense. The fit makes sense, right? I don't think DeAndre Hopkins coming in there derails the development of Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore. I think it gives the Chiefs this red zone option and a reliable first down. Like, it gives them basically a second option to what Travis Kelce provides for this team, quite frankly. It's always been a cost factor. Now, the one thing about the cost factor that's interesting is it's almost certainly just a one-time cost, right? Like a 1-year cost. So even the cost doesn't bother me that much if you can make it work. They don't have any cap space, basically, and there's been basically the comparison on contract is the 1-year, $15 million deal Odell Beckham Jr. got. I would contend that DeAndre Hopkins is a better fit for Kansas City than Odell Beckham Jr. would have been. So if you can get him at the same price, that should have intrigue. But the elephant in the room, Tommy, is they don't have the money now, and they're not going to get the money. The only real way that anybody sees that playing out is if they can get Chris Jones extended, and that doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon.
Do you think that part of the reason why DeAndre Hopkins hasn't landed with the team is because he's waiting on the Chris Jones deal? I mean, there's probably other teams that have offered him, maybe not, exactly what he wants, but have offered him a contract to, come and play for them this upcoming season. It makes me wonder if there is strong mutual interest between the Chiefs and Hopkins, and that Hopkins is willing to sit back and wait for a Chris Jones deal to get done. So then maybe there can be money freed up to sign him and him go to Kansas City.
Yes, I think that's possible. And I don't, Hopkins, as he makes the statement, you just heard it in the NFL update before we came back on, says he'll retire when he's not a 1,000-yard receiver. He obviously still has confidence. I don't even know if he'd come into Kansas City and be a 1,000-yard receiver. I'm not sure that I think that he would be, but that doesn't mean I don't think he can't be effective. Because, again, I think he does feel a need for this team, and the pressure to fill it and the pressure to be healthy would be much lower in Kansas City, probably, than some of these other places. I mean, Tennessee could use him greatly in the mix. New England could use him, right? And they're in the mix. Those seem to be the two front runners, but those aren't contenders. And if he really does want to play for a contender, then neither one of those are good options. So maybe those are options as far as the money goes and as far as a role carved out for him goes. But I do think the Chiefs, if they could make it work financially, are the best option, and that's mutual, too. I really think he could help them in an area that, if they have any questions, that'd be one of them. And so
Let's be real. He's going to help
Chris Jones.
He's the kind of receiver that he's going to help whatever team he goes to.
Correct.
So I think that even a team like the Chiefs, you've got enough, I don't even want to call them question marks, because I think that there's a significant amount of talent in that wide receiver room.
Either. Yeah.
It's just, who is the top dog in that room? I think that's the question, right? Is it going to be Kadarius Toney this upcoming year? Will he be the wide receiver one? What does MVS do in his second year in Kansas City? And then you've got guys that might be able to take a step forward, like Sky Moore. And will Justin Ross turn into a legitimate wide receiver? What can Richie James do in that offense?
I don't know that Richie James is even going to make the team, Tommy. Like, is Richie James even going to make? Because they're going to keep Justin Watson, don't you think?
They spent some money on him. I mean, they spent some money to bring him in. So, I mean, it's not like it's a situation where you got him for nothing. Like, you signed him to a contract because you think he's going to make the team.
I think they're keeping Watson, and then so if it's Watson, and then you've got those other three that we talked about that you just mentioned with MVS and Sky Moore and Toney. Look, I think MVS is will be at best the third most productive receiver on this team. I think it's about Kadarius Toney and it's about Sky Moore. And remember, they drafted Rashee Rice, so he's obviously in the mix too. So that's three. So MVS is not that important to me to what the Chiefs do this year. I mean, he will make some big plays, and that's fine. But the best version of the Chiefs have these formational, nightmares for defenses where Kadarius Toney, Rashee Rice, and Sky Moore are lining up all over the field and just doing crazy stuff, right? Like, I get what the Chiefs are doing, and I like it. I think, the risk comes that Kadarius Toney has risks in and of it. Like, he's got injury risk. He's had a lot of injuries. And there was like the situation in New York was strange, man. Like there was this perception that he just didn't really want to play football. And so that exists, right? But they took Rashee Rice, and Sky Moore doesn't. Sky Moore's the opposite of that. Sky Moore's like says the right thing, whatever. And then Rashee Rice is a project. So I like what they're doing. But if those guys all do that thing, and look, I think Kadarius Toney is talented enough to be one of the top receivers in this league, in this offense, if he were able to play all the games and stay motivated. He is gifted. I don't know how reliable counting on that is. And if you bring in DeAndre Hopkins, I don't think he really throws any of those things off. I think that DeAndre Hopkins with Patrick Mahomes, who is always supremely confident throwing the ball no matter who that receiver on the other end is, right? He does that as much as any quarterback in the league, where he's like, if I think the play can be made, you're going to have a chance to make it, right? He does that. DeAndre Hopkins does that better than anybody over the last decade. Like, he makes those plays. And so it makes like a ton of sense for him to come in there. It's just, can they afford it? Not at the moment. Are they willing to spend the money? I think that they are. They just don't have the money right now, and it all depends on Chris Jones.
And I think that also the only concern that I have about bringing in Hopkins, and I'll be clear, I think that the concern is worth it. I'm not going to be upset if they bring in Hopkins, but the only concern I think that would be on the table is if you bring in a wide receiver the caliber of Hopkins, and then you also have Toney and MVS and all in Sky Moore. Does that stunt the development of some of these other wide receivers like Rashee Rice?
I think it stunts MVS. I think it stunts MVS, which I don't care about if I'm the Chiefs. Like, that's not that big of a concern to me. I don't think it stunts the other three because I think they're all going to do different things. I think it stunts MVS. And quite frankly, that's not a bad thing because I just don't think he is a receiver.
Well, you've
that
never
you
been
worry
high on
about
MVS
that
in the organization. So I get it. I understand why.
It's fine. He's going to be a handy player. He's a good deep ball guy. Like, he gets open deep. If he can make some of those plays, he'll be. It's not a knock on MVS. It's just like, if you have a chance to upgrade from MVS to DeAndre Hopkins, you do it, right?
But the other guys, you are paying for MVS for this season. So
right. Again, it's all this year's money that doesn't really matter next year, so I don't have a problem with any of it. Because if it's off the books next year and you can make it fit, it's just money that's sitting there. I don't have a problem with that. And it all comes down to whether they can get Chris Jones extended. And I don't know where that's at, man. We're getting close to training camp, and we'll talk about that as we make our way to it. But